Hey, everybody. So we're down to our final lesson in planning your Unit 1 essay. So this lesson, it says introductory paragraph, but in this one I'll be going over the intro, the conclusion, and what your reference list would look like so that you can include that on your outline as well. All right. So the introduction. When you think about your introductory paragraph, and let me just bring over the outline right quick. The introductory paragraph for your typical academic essay will have three parts to it. All right. The thesis is going to be the last sentence in your introductory paragraph. So that thesis we'll talk about in a little bit. That's what's going to preview your general reaction or response to the article. Okay. Another thing that we do in the introduction is we introduce the article. So that'll be a couple sentences in the middle of the introductory paragraph. So I don't want you to jump into your introduction by starting to talk about the article. What we want to do is have a few sentences, maybe 2 or 3 sentences here at the beginning of the intro that lead into the article. Okay. So we call this, some of you may have heard it called a hook, an attention getter. I just refer to it as general engaging introductory material. So the general goal of these couple sentences are to either like engage the reader's interest or give the reader something that they can relate to that draws them into the article. So what we don't want to do in this engaging introductory material is jump right into the topic, jump right into your thesis. We don't want to do that. We want to build gradually to it. All right. Now, a little tip that I kind of picked up on in the past semester is this. One thing that seems to happen when people are developing their intro is that when they introduce the article, they usually start those couple sentences with an expression like, this is the issue discussed by so-and-so in their article so-and-so. Or this is the debate that so-and-so joins in with his article so-and-so, right? So what I'm saying is you're usually going to have a start. When you start to introduce the article, you're usually going to start with something like this is the issue or this is the debate, which means that your engaging introductory material will be discussing in general the issue or the debate or the topic that your essay then engages with. All right. Well, I'll repeat that later on, but it's one way to think about what should go in this engaging introductory material to keep you from jumping right into the article or jumping right into your thesis or anything like that. So really this first half of the intro, we want to avoid getting into specifics from the article, anything like that. We're kind of staying outside the article and gradually building to it. All right, so let's look at some ways that you can do that. So what we want to think about is the general topic of the paper. So is it careers? Is it success? Is it success in college? Is it a sense of purpose in life? Is it career skills? Is it how do we learn? Is it technology, right? So we think about that general topic of your paper and the article and kind of have that in the back of our head, right? And then we want to brainstorm for some possible introductory ideas. So I'm going to have a big old list here of possibilities. And what you want to do is you want to think about, all right, so if the paper is about success in college, right? So that's one of our articles. Personal experience. So what are some personal experiences that you've had that showed you what helps to be successful in college and what doesn't help you to be successful in college? For one, I had a first time around in college and then I dropped out and worked for a couple years. I had a second time around in college and I was a little bit more successful the second time around. So that could be a personal experience I could talk about, like what were the differences in those two sessions, college sessions that I had, right? Common experiences. This could be things that a lot of people have experienced, right? So that gives you something that your reader might be able to relate to and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's happened to me, right? So you're describing something that might happen. Maybe we're talking about reading online versus reading print, right? So a common experience might be how a lot of students um, I know had Chromebooks like distributed to them, maybe in middle school. That's when my son got his, was in middle school. So, remembering in middle school when the teacher brought in that cart full of Chromebooks and kind of walked around and gave them out to everybody. And probably the students were really excited about it because they had their own little computer to learn from. But then maybe as it went on, it turned out that it wasn't really as great a learning experience, right? So that is a common experience that a lot of my students have talked about. So you would just describe something that you think people have experienced that's related to your topic. Description, describing just a scene. So like experiences are more like events, where a scene might just be kind of a still, kind of just a scene. I don't know how to explain it. You could relate to current events, things that are happening in the news or, basically the news, things that are happening out in the world. You could look up a quotation. It could be a famous quotation. There's a site called Brainy Quote that I use a lot, but you could really just Google quotations and a lot of sites come up. And you could find a quotation that's relevant to your general topic and then use that to lead into your introduction. Into your article. You could refer to something in pop culture or something from history or something from literature. You could use facts or statistics. That might be something that you would have to look up another article, and that's fine. If you do that, don't turn this into a research paper. But if you did want to look up a fact or a statistic, that's fine as well. Some people ask if they can use questions. Questions are fine, but sometimes that technique is a little overdone, so I leave that off my big list. Another thing I would stay away from are dictionary definitions. They tend to be sort of tired and overdone and, just kind of not really the best strategy. So you want to think about a couple of these possible strategies and just remember that your goal is to either grab the reader's attention or give the reader something to relate to that is somewhat tied to the topic of the article that you selected and the essay that you're writing. Okay. And that is what you're going to include in this box here, the engaging introductory material. Just a couple ideas for what you think you might want to include there. And remember that you're not talking about the article yet. You're just talking about the topic kind of in general, right? Okay. The next part of your intro is going to introduce the article. Here's where you're going to mention the author's full name, and this will be the only time you refer to their full name in the essay. You will give the article title and you'll use quotation marks around the article title. You will give the publication title and that will be italicized. You can include the year of publication. Now, here's where you're going to use the main idea in your own words. Remember a couple lessons back in the post-reading strategies, I went over a way to come up with a main idea in your own words where you look for what concepts are repeated a lot in your article. You list those repeated concepts, maybe choose the top 4 or 5 that are most important. Maybe find synonyms for those words if you can, and then use those 4 or 5 words to write your own sentence that reflects the author's main idea. So it's really important to be able to state the main idea in your own words. Oops. For now, on the outline, you could just list that information, right? And then when you start drafting, you would put it into sentences. Okay. Then the next thing that you'll have is your thesis statement. So here you're going to look at the topic sentences that you planned in your body paragraphs, and you will try to come up with a sentence that kind of covers all of them. A lot of times in an essay like the one we're working on here, you could do that thesis that kind of briefly lists the topics of the three topic sentence body paragraphs. So again, on the outline, just do your best with it. If you need to do something different, I'll let you know. All right. And so that thesis is going to go here. And in all honesty, I sometimes plan my introductory paragraph out of order. So I usually start with the thesis because that's what I already know because I've written my topic sentences. The background information on the article is usually pretty straightforward, so then I would fill that in, and then I would figure out what's the best way to lead into that. All right. But again, this stuff is not going to come from your article. It's going to come from like the world, I guess, right? What's going on in the world that's kind of connected to the topic of your article and your essay. Remember that good thing to do is to looking for my pause button and I can't find it. Look at the sample paper. See if I can find it easily. Okay. So this is the sample paper that was included like in the course, and it's okay. But let me show you the 3 parts here. Okay. So we have engaging introductory material is the bulk of the introduction. That takes up the first couple sentences of it. So we have teacher, electrician, social media influencer. If I did not stumble upon other career ideas on my own, I would not have known what else was available to me. Choosing a career is so important, but people often do not spend enough time learning about the options. Young people tend to focus on a few obvious options and do not even realize there's much to learn about careers that are not as well known. Now, here I would say this is the issue that's discussed in the Reason Magazine article, but they decided to go a different way. In the Reason Magazine article, Reading, Writing, Arithmetic, and Zero About Jobs, Lenore Scanazzi, 2021, asserts that schools should do more to expose students to potential career pathways. So see how we have the publication is italicized, the article title, the author's full name, the year of publication, and the main idea. This student managed to include that in one sentence. You could maybe have 2 sentences doing that if maybe the main idea was a little bit long, or for some reason one sentence was a little too awkward, right? And those elements can go in any order. So the list that I gave you said, I think the author first, and then the article title. I forget what order I had on my list, but they can go in any order as long as you have those 5 elements, right? And then we end the introduction with the thesis, presenting the 3 main points of the essay in the order that they will appear. This article made me think about how I learned about careers within my family through social media and in high school. All right? So it's a decent introduction. It's doing what it needs to do. Okay? So make sure you're looking at the samples of the essays as you go through the semester. So there's our intro. Right, the next thing that you would want to plan out is your concluding paragraph. I know a lot of students struggle with concluding paragraphs, and I understand that. I used to struggle with them myself. Since I've been teaching about them, I've learned a lot more about them. But you kind of feel like you've gotten to the end of the essay. What more is there to say? But the reason for the concluding paragraph is so that the essay doesn't just stop. It just kind of brings it to a finish, to a close, and just makes it end a little bit more gracefully. Okay? So what I think about with the introduction is 2 parts. I'm sorry. The introduction's 3 parts. We're talking about the conclusion now. The conclusion usually has 2 parts to it. And it's almost like taking the intro and flipping it upside down, and you don't have to introduce the article anymore. So remember, the intro was kind of that introductory material. Bring in the article, thesis. We're going to take that, flip it, take out the mention of the article, the detailed mention of the article. We'll have a sentence at the beginning that restates the thesis. Okay. And then we'll have a sentence or 2 that, again, kind of moves out to the world again. All right. So the intro kind of started out in the world and moved into the essay. There's the essay. Now we're finishing and we're going back out into the world. So basically what that means is we're thinking about, after you've read and reacted to the article that you read, what does this mean now moving forward? So a lot of times the language in the conclusion answers questions like so what or what now, and looks to the future. All right. Let's see what we do in the sample paper. All right. This one's a little long for a conclusion. I mean, it's fine, but it's a little bit longer than I usually see. So we have, now that I'm in college, I had to choose a major and a career. Interesting enough, I did not make my decision with much input from my family, social media, or my high school. So they're rephrasing the thesis kind of towards the beginning of the conclusion. Instead, how Skenazy mentions people leaving it all to Mike Rowe and his dirty jobs, I got my inspiration from television. Now, this student did include a quote from the article in their conclusion. You do not have to. They just happen to. I always loved CSI crime scene investigations, so I decided to become a forensic scientist. However, students need more than just TV shows to inform their career decisions, so families, social medias, and high schools should do more to help young people with one of the biggest decisions of their lives. So see how there's this like recommendation? This is what we need to do moving forward. So almost always when I'm reading a decent conclusion, it has this language about what do we do from here on? What do we do in the future? Recommendations, predictions. So what now? Okay. So that's kind of what conclusions will do. And really, one or two sentences for the restate your thesis, one or two sentences for the look to the future. That's usually enough for a conclusion for essays of this length. All right, one more thing I'm going to add to this lesson just so that, here we go. We can kind of finish all this up. There wasn't enough here for me to do a whole other video, so I just added it to this one. I will ask that you include your reference list on your outline, and your reference list will have one source on it, right? The article that you chose for R1. The only time that you might have another source is if you decide to use a fact or a statistic in your introduction, and that comes from a source that you need to cite. Otherwise, you'll just have your reading one listed on your reference list. So the basic APA reference that we're starting with, we're going to run into some other, some more variation in APA references as we go through the semester. And then when you get to English 102, you'll hit a lot more variety because you'll be finding a lot more articles. But for what we're doing with reading one, this template that I'm showing you here should work for all of the R1s, except for one. There's one that's going to be a little bit different, all right? So the basic APA reference is going to be the author's last name, first initial, so Skenazy L. The people that will have a little bit of a difference here are the ones who are reading The Enduring Power of Print, has two authors. So you would just list both of them here. All right, so author one, last name, first initial, you would do that little and symbol, and then author two, last name, first initial. I think that's the only one that kind of breaks from this template. The next thing you'll have in your reference will be the publication date, and it's going to be year, month, date, however much of the date that they give you. You can see that with the sample Skenazy, it only has 2021 May. Some of the articles give the full date, so just give whatever they give you, but the year is going to be first. Also note that the month should be written out. Don't abbreviate. The next thing will be the title of the specific article. Even though we're using quotation marks in the essay when we talk about the article title, you don't use quotation marks on the APA reference list. But one thing you do with an article title is, it might be hard to notice here, but you capitalize the first word. You don't capitalize any other words in the article title unless it's a proper noun, like it's something that's always capitalized. So see how the Skenazy article title, the R in reading is capitalized, but writing, arithmetic, zero, jobs, those are not capitalized. This is something that's called, let me see if I can. I thought I had a way to annotate on here. Pen. No, it's not going to let me do text. It's called sentence style capitalization. Sentence style capitalization, because you're capitalizing the way you would a sentence. So you'll probably hear me mention that a few more times this semester, sentence style capitalization. Okay. Or another way it's worded is sentence case capitalization, CASE. All right, article title in sentence style capitalization. The next thing we have is the publication title. This is going to have kind of typical title capitalization where you capitalize all the important words. The one for the example just has one word, so it's just reason. Notice it might be hard to see, but this is also italicized. All right. And then the last thing you'll have is the URL. I think all of the articles I gave you have URLs. If you can't find it, just send me an email and let me know. I thought I included them, but sometimes I forget. All right, so that's your reference. So exit, drag that out of here, bring this over. All right, so you'll plan your intro. Hopefully you've already done all this. Concluding paragraph, restate thesis, closing thoughts, and then your best effort at a reference here. The other thing that I want to show you is that the reference is, it has what's called a hanging indent. And see how the first line is all the way over to the left, but the other lines are all indented? That's a hanging indent. So I can show you real quick how to do that. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so this one has the hanging indent on it. Let me turn that off. All right, so here's what it would look like if you just typed it up, right? So we just type up the reference like this, okay? To do the hanging indent, and I'll show you on this video, and I'll probably show you other times, and I think I have like a whole separate video for people that don't know how to do it. You want to highlight your whole reference. You want to go up here to Format, Align and Indent, Indentation Options, Special, select Hanging. This should say 0.5 and apply, right? And there's the hanging indent. Now remember, this is just the first paper and this is just the outline. So if you're having trouble with that, don't panic. Just let me know. Write on your outline that you couldn't figure it out and I'll help you with it. And when you submit your outline, this is basically what it'll look like. I'm going to ask that you submit the whole document to me. And then I'll just scroll down and look at your outline because it's nice for me to go back and see how you got where you got to, if that makes sense. Also, remember that you can write notes to me in here if there's any section that you were having trouble with, that you have questions about. Just write a little note to me. It helps me if you do it in maybe a different color. Is this okay for my quote, right? So just something like that. All right, my friends. Well, I look forward to looking at your outlines, but certainly let me know if you need help, have questions, get stuck, anything like that. All right, take care. Bye-bye.